This episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by the Dollar Shave Club. Guys, you don't need to choose between price and quality to get an amazing and affordable shave. DollarShaveClub.com is the answer. To prove how amazing the shave really is, right now they're going to give you your first month free to join the club. DollarShaveClub.com delivers amazing razors right to your door for a third of the price of what the greedy razor corporations charge. You need to join the club like I did. I've been looking damn good. Gia's been feeling up on my face, and she's like, damn, Tim. Why are you so smooth? I'm like, Dollar Shave Club, baby. That's how it works. Go to Dollar Shave Club and pick a razor from their lineup of amazing blades. I've been using the Executive Blade with their Dr. Carver Shave Butter. And man, if you've never used shave butter, I'll tell you what, you got to try it. It's fantastic. The blade just gently glides with the smoothest shave I've ever had. Here is what you need to do. See why over 3 million members like me love the Dollar Shave Club. They're so confident in the quality of all their products. You can get your first month of the club for free. You just pay shipping. No big deal. After that, just a few bucks a month. No long-term commitment, no hidden fees. Go to dollarshaveclub.com/Gamescast. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Gamescast. The next topic, as always, brought to you by you over at the Kind of Funny forums. You can go to kindoffunny.com/Gamescast topic, just like my boy Doug Chin, aka Dougser, did. Shout out
what
to
up,
you,
Big
dude.
Dougs?
He's from San Francisco. I went to high school with him.
Oh, really?
No big deal.
Is this the Doug you lived with?
No,
Okay.
different Doug.
My first system was a Sega Game Gear. My uncle bought it for my 7th birthday. I remember playing a Ninja game on it for a few days. My parents really didn't like anything about it, and the fact that it was mobile, bad quality games and graphics, so they returned it and bought me a Sega Genesis instead. Now I'm currently using a PS4 to play the majority of my games. My question is, do you think that the original console you grew up with playing as a child influences what side of the console wars you'll be on? What was each of your first systems? My first system that I owned myself was a Super Nintendo, but in my house, my dad had a Commodore 64. So that's like the first thing I grew up playing. But Kevin had the NES, and like that was like the first game system that I really got into playing. So like from pretty early on, I was a Nintendo guy, and that really did stick. And then the PlayStation thing came along like once Crash Bandicoot came into my life, and it was just pretty much, all right, cool, I like this stuff. And Xbox just never hit, and it's like when it came to the Nintendo versus Sega, I liked Sonic, so I didn't have anything. I wasn't so like fanboy where I was like, fuck you, this is better than yours. But it was so clear to me that Mario was better that I'm just like, all right, cool, I like both, but I like Mario more. Like I couldn't imagine anyone liking Sonic more. Sega
You had to.
still
That's
can't.
what it was. That's what you had. That's how fanboyism works. And that's how schoolyard shit works. Where it's like, yeah, my first system was a Sega Master System, and that put into me me ignoring Nintendo until N64. That was my first Nintendo. It's the Game Boy, but do we count the Game Boy? I loved my Game Boy, but I don't know if that works. My first Nintendo console was the N64, and it was one of those things of video games to me were the introduction of. I saw Ghostbusters, asked what that was, got it for my birthday, went off to the races with Master System, and then one day went to Travis's house in our neighborhood, and he was playing Mario. His brother was playing Mario. I'm like, what is this? Like, it's Nintendo. I'm like, what is that? And then this thing is my, and then they came over like, what is this? I'm like, it's Sega. It's blah blah. And they're like, I've never heard of this thing. And then they insult you and you insult them, and then right there, that's how it is. You know what I mean? There's no room for me as like whatever 5 or 6 to have objectivity here of like, let me see this Mario game.
Yeah,
Run me through why this is better. Oh shit, you're right. This is way better.
That to me is what's surprising. So when I was younger, it was kind of just like, even to me, so obvious that Nintendo was better that I'm like, whatever. And I was just happened to be on the right side of that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later with the Xbox, PS2, GameCube generation where I was lucky enough to have all three just over time. Like eventually it happened. Loved the hell out of my GameCube. The first party games were fantastic. My PS2 was my multi-platform system of choice. And in addition to the Ratchet and Clanks and the first party and second party games that they had. But the Xbox, like I couldn't deny that I loved Halo. Like Halo 1 and 2 were awesome, and I was so into those. For some reason I played the Prince of Persia games on those systems, and Splinter Cell was great, and Knights of the Old Republic. But besides that, I'm like, how could anyone defend the Xbox?
Yeah.
Like, it's like
Stubbs the zombie. You left Stubbs the zombie.
I left it off for a reason.
No, because you just didn't play. You didn't understand.
I played Stubbs
You
the
didn't
zombie.
understand the high level concept here of him going after his girlfriend. He was dead. Did you understand?
He was dead. But no, the Xbox was one of those things where I'm like, I get it. I get why it's great, but there's no argument to be made that it's better than the PS2 or the GameCube. Like, are you crazy? And I'll never freaking forget this guy, Bruce, that used to work with Alfredo at Best Buy, we did a road trip down to LA one time, and we got into this heated discussion where he's trying to tell me that the Xbox was better. I'm like, and that's when I realized that like this shit was real, because like he was just trying to defend the Xbox's library as being so superior that there's not even any way you could look at it that the PS2 or GameCube were better. And
he's like, bro, we got Jade Empire 9.9 IGN.com.
Nah, that was when I realized like I do have my fanboyism, because I was just like, fuck that. Nah, as much as I like your shit, you're wrong, you motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, that's just how it was. I remember that's just how you reacted to being challenged or new things, at least in my thing. Whereas like Poe and I, our friendship's based on video game football, right? Maddens and such, college footballs. And I remember the first time we went to Patrick Fanella's house, and he had just bought the PlayStation, and they had whatever game day it was, and it was playing in like when X triangle circle pops up, and that's like another language. You're like, what the fuck is this shit? God. What are you doing? What is this? This isn't how this works. Like immediately we're like, ha ha. Like poo-pooed it, you know what I mean? Like, well, this thing sucks clearly. Look at how boxy their heads are.
When you're playing on the Xbox, but you're used to playing on PS2. It's like,
right.
press X. And I'm like, that ain't my X.
Yeah.
That ain't my X.
Get out of here with this garbage.
What will you call?
I mean, Nintendo flows through my veins forever because of starting. NES was my first console that I owned. We had an Atari 2600 too, but that was my brother's. I mean, I'm always I call myself a reformed Nintendo fan now, but I mean, that's where I started. I was a fucking massive Nintendo fanboy for a very long time, long after I joined the PlayStation ecosystem too, because I had a PS1, PS2, everything. I had a PSP, everything. Go on and on. But I really loved Nintendo, so I think that I have a soft spot for them, and I think that's because of the way I began. I knew the guys next door to me that I grew up with had a Master System, had a Genesis, so I got to, and they had a shit ton of games too. I remember playing a lot of those games, but it just wasn't. It wasn't for me. I thought the Genesis was strange. I remember there was a few games on there that I was really into with like Phantasy Star and stuff like that, but I was just like, this is a weird console. I feel like this isn't even a real thing. You know? Like that's kind of how I really felt about it. I was like, what is this? A Master System. I never saw a Master System with my own two eyes after that ever again, except for until I was an adult. Like that might as well have been like the only Master System in existence. I never heard anyone ever talk about that thing, except for the guy that owned it. He didn't even like it. You know, it was like in his room because he was the youngest, and the Genesis was in like another room, and the NES was in another room. So, so I one thing I know for sure is that I always kind of looked at Sega a little skeptically. I owned a Dreamcast. I had a Genesis too, but I owned a Dreamcast, and that was the only console of theirs that I was like really, like I really loved it. The Genesis was like fine. I mean, it was a kind of a poor man's Super Nintendo to me.
Mr. Bushido says, "Hey, kind of funny dudes. My question is about gameplay. To me, the only two really perfected gameplay types and genres are platformers and shooters. Why is that? Yeah, I'm a big fan of fantasy games, but oftentimes the gameplay is subpar. I really loved the world of Dragon Age Inquisition, but kept getting bored because of the simplistic, repetitive gameplay. Even a game like Skyrim, which is amazing, and I love that game, it was despite the simple, clunky combat and more because of exploration in the world itself.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? Do you think other genres could ever be as tight or entertaining with the moment-to-moment gameplay like shooters and platformers? Will it take perfect VR and motion control to ever achieve my dream of perfect fantasy gameplay? Where are the Star Wars lightsaber simulators? Come on, guys."
We can't toss that. I mean, like when he's talking about these fantasy games, he's talking about these giant open world RPGs, right? The reason that falls apart moment to moment is because you have to get from place to place. You can't be teleported around. That is immersion breaking, right? When you're Geralt and you're running around and you're fucking witchering it up, you want to witcher it up. And part of it is the journey of like, think of it like with Zelda Summer Breeze, where they're talking about anything you see you can go to. You can go up the fucking mountain over there that's got a goofy ass name. Like part of that is that when you get to the top of the mountain, you look back like, man, I did all that. I went all that way. And like when you're playing Witcher, even if it is you're fast traveling around, you got to those points. So there is that moment of like, fuck, I've unlocked all this. This is how big this world is. And those games, when you talk about a Witcher, when you talk about a Fallout, when you talk about a Skyrim, you are talking about the world you're in and how alive it feels and what's happening in it and the overarching plot. When you talk about Mega Man, you're talking about how great the gameplay is and how awesome it is to jump from this to do that and how great it feels. And same thing with a shooter, right? Colin talks about Call of Duty and why he loves Call of Duty. He talks about how it feels, that every game should play this way because you're being funneled around, you're going to where you need to go. Even now, it's a cool thing of getting to select the mission. But once you're in the mission, like the mission's the mission, and that's what you're trying to do. you're trying to go through because they want you in this action game going. And like, you can stop like I do. And like I was talking about earlier, and, you know, go and explore the moon visitors bureau here or whatever. But you're still moving through this thing where they can make things happen to make it go, to make you go, holy shit, what a great explosion. Oh my God, this robot's crashing through the wall. Whereas with The Witcher, that's impossible. You can't be, it's not impossible, but it's way harder to be like, all right, if he comes all the way over here, we'll have something explode out of this wall.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thing to think about. I think that because shooters and platform games are so kind of intrinsically gameplay oriented, where it's just like every single thing you do is led by inputs that you're doing, whereas a lot of the other genres are kind of just story driven, or it's like when you look at the genres, what's the most important thing about it? When you look at the ones that we're talking about, it is the gameplay. When you look at those, it is the story. You look at Uncharted, it's like, what's the most important thing about it? The gameplay or the experience? I think the clear, easy answer is the experience. Sure. But I think other genres like rhythm games, they're pretty much there with the gameplay like that. But that's the thing, is it's like, it's a genre by genre kind of question. I don't think fantasy games or RPGs or any of that will ever do that, because those are about the experience, not about the gameplay.
Interesting, yeah. I would say even too with like the rhythm games too, I think people would be quick to say, well, they're not perfected, right? Because of X, Y. They can get frustrating. I think it is one of those things that you can memorize a song in Rock Band or whatever. Or you can memorize a DDR move, but that is such a different skill level. Where in a shooter, there is more leniency. Even in Mega Man, there is more, right? You can get hit a few times before it's all fucked up. Mm-hmm. Whereas with like a Rock Band, there might be some bridge I fuck up 3 times in the song as it comes through over and over and over again. And that's on me, but it feels way more frustrating and not perfected.
I think 2D platforms specifically are pure gameplay, and I think that they're never going to be bested from that perspective. But I think that you're seeing, obviously, there's shooters that feel great, as we were saying. It always kind of astounds me when I play a 2D platformer or a shooter that doesn't feel right, because I'm like, there's so many examples of how to do this, and I don't understand what you don't get about that. As far as I think that there's some great gameplay being found in third-person games too, even in RPGs. I think Kingdoms of Amalur is a great example of an open world, very nerdy role-playing game that is about combat. It isn't about the story, and it isn't about anything else except for playing it. Even though there's plenty of this to do in the game, that's a broken clocks write twice a day situation, but they do exist. So don't write them off completely. I also think Infamous is another example of a third-person game that feels awesome. So I think that. Vanquish, I mean, they exist. So I think it goes out of those two spheres. But I do agree that the 2D platformers specifically, 3D platformers to an extent, but not really. 2D platformers and shooters, first-person shooters, are the king and queen, let's say, of genres.
Fighting games.
Fighting games,
put them in that category.
Absolutely,
as well.
You're absolutely right. That's another great example. And some games get it right, and some games get it wrong. And they're similar to Call of Duty versus Battlefield, similar to all these kinds of things. There's different feels to Arc Systems games as opposed to Capcom games, etc. So.
Let's see.
Get ready to go. Hip hop with no.
Jake says, hey guys, I was just thinking about YouTube gaming and would like to hear you guys do a retrospective now that, if you can believe it, it launched over a year ago on August 26, 2015. It was kind of exciting to see how the launch would play out and what it would mean for Twitch a year later, and I don't know if it really changed things all that much. Do you guys ever use it personally or visit the site /content regularly? Would be interested to hear your thoughts. So here's something that I've been spewing for a long time.
Spew.
I think people's understanding of what YouTube gaming is from the beginning has been wrong. Before they announced it, I was wrong myself. I thought it was going to be a Twitch competitor.
Yeah.
But it became very clear talking to Fwiz over at YouTube and talking to all of the YouTube people and seeing how they're using it, that it is just their live platform and their gaming YouTube content in a different wrapper.
Sure.
It is for people that live and breathe YouTube, which are people, YouTube gaming Let's Play videos, which are people that are 13 to 20 and that just grow up watching Minecraft videos, you know? And to them, it's awesome. And YouTube gaming is used. If you look at the stats, it's used a lot. People just assume it's not because they don't use it. Because you guys are using Twitch or you're using YouTube or you're playing games yourself and not doing these things. But you can, like, kind of funny, it's on YouTube Gaming. Any YouTube channel you can think of, it's YouTube Gaming. You just need to, I forgot what it was, but type in gaming.youtube.com/kindoffunny or /kindoffunnygames. It just makes it look different and it makes it a little bit more accessible for the type of content that you'd be consuming if you make a lot of Let's Play videos. In terms of, is it a success or not? I mean, it's made their YouTube's live platform a lot better. Does it rival Twitch? No, not at all. It's taking them really long to kind of add a lot of functions that are necessary, like the moderation shit that they just recently added for comments and stuff. And does that work? No. People hate it. It's stupid. It's totally getting in the way and not working the way it's supposed to, and it's getting in the way of getting the right content to be promoted. But YouTube gaming, it is what it is. I don't think that they could have beat Twitch as much as I wish that they would. But there's a lot of success to be had there, and I like that now they're finally putting a lot of effort towards premium content with the Jeff Keighley YouTube Prime thing or what I forgot what it was called. I don't know.
YouTube Gaming, the show that's on every Thursday. I forget what it's called.
And they're actually picking different YouTube creators and focusing on promoting them. It's just YouTube gaming is important whether or not you realize or care about it, because it is taking gaming content and giving it focus on YouTube. YouTube is about music. YouTube is about lifestyle stuff. Gaming is a huge vertical there, and it is giving people like us the ability to get on the front page and to be featured by YouTube themselves, and that's huge. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a bigger deal for sure when it came out, and at the very least, I thought it would be a huge kick in Twitch's ass to really shake things up and really step up their game and really take that Amazon money they got and invest and go and do this. And granted, it's a better experience on Twitch than it was, a year ago, but it's not leaps and bounds better. You know what I mean?
Yep. Dub Chaos says, hey guys, I'm an indie dev, and while I've listened to the shows before, I recently picked up the habit of listening to them while working. I tend to easily get distracted, so your shows not only help me focus, but also keep my mind set in the game industry, so thank you for that. My question is, how do I get my game noticed by people, by the media specifically? I thought you two have a lot to kind of say to this because you've dealt with PR people for so long.
Sure. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that the conundrum that indie devs have, I'm not in media anymore, so I don't get the emails I used to get, is you have to kind of thoughtfully do it without spamming people, without reach out to the right people. The guys at Yacht Club, for instance, had talked openly about how they identified me very early on in the development of the game as a person that they wanted to go to with it, and they did, because they understood my roots and that the game would resonate with me, and therefore I would talk about it, and it worked, exactly to their plan, because I fell in love with that game very quickly. I am of the mind, and I know that this is a harsh thing to say, but it is the reality. Good games don't stay hidden. There's no hidden gem out there that no one knows about. Like, if your game's good, someone's probably going to notice it. And I know that's not the case in maybe the phone space, and maybe not even wholly in the PC space, but certainly in the console space. Hidden games, there are no hidden games on PSN that no one knows about. These things spread around, and so I think I know that I know that indie developers and games generally live and die on these first 10 days, first 2 weeks sales. But I do also believe that there are games on the back end that once things organically spread around, if your game's really good and it gets on PSN or it gets on Xbox Live and maybe even gets on Steam, people are going to notice it. It's important to get preview coverage if you really want to. It's important to get people to notice the game, but I don't think that's necessarily the be all end all. Make a great game and someone's going to find it. I mean, it's just totally inevitable, and that happens time and time again on PSN specifically, where games come out and I'm like, what the fuck is this game? And then someone's like, no, the game's actually really great, and you go back and you're like, oh, it is really great. So I know that that's not a catch-all. I know that there are games that slip through the cracks, but generally speaking, I've never heard of anyone find a game 5 years later and be like, why did no one talk about this game 5 years ago? And I'm like, because it's not good, and people would have figured that out already. So I think it's a little easier than you might think, a little more intuitive.
Yeah, I mean, the answer, I think, for an indie developer in particular is, no, this isn't what you want to hear, but go small. You are a small game. Target the small audiences and go from there. So many people I've made this game, which is a success amongst itself that you finished a game. That's awesome. You worked 2 years on it, so you want it on IGN, you want it on GameSpot, you want it on all these different things, and those are the ones that get 14,000 emails a day, and it's so hard. So unless you're going to investigate and know that there's a Colin there or a Marty there and they love these kind of games, and then you know them or you're able to hit them up, that's a struggle, right? Like, in the reverse is the fact of the Vita Lounge. I mean, there is a magazine and website about the Vita. No matter what you are into, no matter what type of game there is an audience for it, and there is a passionate fan base for that. Mm-hmm. Similar with what we have with our best friends, right? Of we're not the biggest site or YouTube channel by any stretch of the imagination, but our audience is so powerful and so into it that's how it happens. And that's the thing where it's I sent you that code yesterday for that adventure game that they're calling a weird one for Vita. Thanks, voice control. That's exactly what I wanted, of course, you piece of fucking garbage. I can't ever, I don't even know how to, you're supposed to pronounce it. Have a good name for your game, but Dimitras or whatever, this quirky adventure game for Vita, right? Where the guy was complaining openly on Twitter that is, so how do I'm an indie dev, I put this on a Vita and nobody wants to cover it from the big sites. And somebody's like, well, what about Greg? You know, he's a big fan. He's like, I didn't know. And it's like, that was enough that I got it and I got the codes and gave them to Colin and I to play and screw around with. I don't know if we'll ever talk about the game. I don't know if it's good. I haven't had a chance.
Yeah.
But like, that's how it goes, right? That you start smaller. And then if it was that we loved it and we started beating the drum about it and it was a great game, of course, we would then tell Marty not to cover it, but in conversation at a bar or something. And then IGN's interested. But it's the same way of like, if you're making a game like Gone Home, you know, Marty Sleevewood loves those kind of games. You'd hit him up.
Yep.
And it's always hit somebody up personally. Don't send out the form letter with the screenshots embedded and all that other bullshit then, because you just get tossed out the side unless you look through them and think they're cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the other side of it where not for games, but for making videos. Like I have a lot of experience trying to pre-IGN, even like when I was nothing. It was just like, okay, cool. How do I become something? You know, how do I get people, the big guys, to care about me? And it was really spending a lot of time thinking about what your plan is, who you're sending it to, and why, and what's the messaging there.
Mm-hmm.
Like even to this day, I still have to do this type of stuff. But I'll never forget, even at IGN, like with the Avengers boy band video, I was like, all right, cool, I made this. Who is my audience for this? I'm not just going to send it to literally everybody because that's annoying and that's spam and people don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to target the places that I know posted things similar before, and I'm going to write them a message that, yeah, the bulk of it might be copy and pasted, but at least some of the message is directed to a person with a direct call to action based on that person. So them reaching out to you about Shovel Knight, that makes so much sense. You know, for me, I knew the Kotaku would, when I did the Macklemore Game Shop video, they post fun things like this. So I'm like, cool, I need to target the people that post the fun things, send it to them. And once Kotaku posts it, IGN will see it. IGN looks at Kotaku. You know what I mean? Like that, you got to think that way where it really does snowball. And once one person talks about it, everyone else is gonna start. And the most important thing is to condense your message as much as possible. Don't write a whole press release that's boring as fuck that nobody cares about of just like why your game's awesome. Show them why your game is awesome. Have a GIF, one GIF that's just showing a cool mechanic in the game. Because when people open that email, it'll catch their attention. They'll be like, oh, that does look cool. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, that's what happened with on PS I Love You XOXO last week, I guess, by the time this post, right? Like it was, a guy hit me up right before the show about, hey, my game's coming to PSX. And he had 2 screenshots and I was like, holy shit, this game looks awesome. And then read the little description he gave and I'm like, oh, fuck, yeah, I'll talk about this in the show. And we should do this every time. Everybody who's like, we should pick a game every week that's at PSX that you don't know about that looks cool.
Yep. And that goes such a long way. It's just like make the message simple, always have a call to action, and really double down on that shit. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 94 of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Thank you very much for your adventures with us. Till next time.